Hey parents, now that I have your attention, let's discuss school reopening fall 2020 options. Let me be clear. As a parent, I personally prefer schools not to physically reopen for the safety of our educators and our students. But I'm also keenly aware, no matter what we want to do or believe in a sense, schools are going to reopen in the fall. Thus, we need to understand what are the options. Second, we need to truly understand it is imperative that schools are successful in the fall. There's some bigger pieces at play as it relates to schools reopening that are beyond our control. Thus, in this moment, we need to clearly understand what are our options and make sure schools are successful. If you're given options, I say if because some places parents are not given options. They're given, this is your one option. But if you're given options, I want to help you clearly understand what are those options and what do they mean as far as impacts. As I go through the options, I'm going to focus on the definition because the terms are used interchangeably and they mean different things based upon your school, based upon your district, based upon your state, and across the nation. Thus, I am going to label the typical 4 options. They're in no particular order. I'm going to give you the options in terms of option 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to have to look back and see what does that mean for my school. Option 1 is typically going to be defined like this. Teaching and learning occurs on the school campus. This is your traditional, you may hear it defined as school-based, brick and mortar, face-to-face, regular, in-person. That is what you traditionally know as school. Option 1 is pretty self-explanatory. Most of us are familiar with that particular option. Options 2 and 3 seem the same, but they're distinctly different. Option 2 is an online instructional model that mirrors school campus. Students remain attached to the current school campus or a local school campus. And I distinctly say attached to a campus or a local school campus because districts are still trying to figure out if they open face-to-face, do they have a face-to-face campus and that campus delivers instruction, let's say via a camera like you all are watching now, or do they have a face-to-face school and then they have a separate school that only does video recordings? And I'm using video recordings term loosely, but understand with this model, your student is still remains enrolled in the school. They still get the same level of instruction. And let's say things go back to normal in January, when they go back to, let's say a face-to-face setting in January, it's a smooth transition. Most importantly, I'm coming back to they remain enrolled in the school. Your child being enrolled in their home school or the campus that they go to impacts funding. If hypothetically students leave the school, they're going to lose teachers. That's impacting funding. We'll talk about which option impacts funding in that sense. You're going to hear option 2 possibly using these terms: hybrid, remote, distance, virtual, online. In Orange County, they're proposing the term innovative. Don't look at the term, look at the definition and what it means. Option 3, a full-time virtual school separate from the current school campus. Your child is withdrawn from the current school campus. This is provided by the district, the state, and/or a private entity. What does this mean? It seems very similar to option 2, but is distinctly different. In option 2, your child is still enrolled in the school. They're still going to get that funding for your child being there. In option 3, your child is fully in a virtual environment. Think about if you're taking a college course online, it'd be in that format. Your child is withdrawn from the school. If your child is withdrawn, your home school won't get those fundings. They won't get that funding. It is still possible for them to receive services. There's some nuances with it. But if, let's say hypothetically, half the students from your child's home school leave and go to the virtual piece, they're going to lose approximately half of the teachers due to something called an FTE count. Less students, less funding. Some are going to say, well, Chris, that means they're going to need more virtual teachers. In a virtual environment, you need less teachers. Thus, That's why virtual environments thrive, because you can do less teachers, more students. With this option, you're going to kind of be on your own in a sense as it relates to instruction. Yes, you're still going to have a teacher, but think about it from the terms of a virtual school, like what colleges offer. With them also being withdrawn, your campus is going to lose funding. If things return to normal in January, if your child was in that full-time virtual environment, let's say those 500 kids that left went virtual and they all come back in January, guess what? They're missing funding at the moment and they won't have enough teachers at the moment. When you hear option 3, it says it can be labeled as remote, distance, virtual, or online. The same terms that is in some instances being used to describe option 2 in some places. Thus, options 2 and 3 seem similar, but they're distinctly different. Also within option 3, when it comes to the full-time virtual, it may or may not follow what is being learned in the school at the same pace and the same time. Thus, in January, if students re-enroll, it may be a little bit different. At the end, I give my recommendation out of the 4 options, but I want parents to understand there's a distinct difference between a full-time virtual and your child getting their traditional school services at your home. That's a huge difference. Option 4 that most parents are being presented with is a home education. Home education is a parent-directed educational option. Parents have the freedom to determine their child's educational path and the plan for reaching their goals. That is your traditional homeschool. With homeschool, you're totally separate from your school district in a sense, and you're providing all of the lessons and things at home. I know right now there's a big push out there, hey, we should homeschool our kids, and then you can get funding, etc. I get it, but in the same token, are you fully prepared to provide your child a high quality education in that environment? There's something we need to consider and think about. Lastly, you all need to read the fine print. I purposely went through the definitions because when you watch the news in different entities, everything is put in big picture terms. Here are your 3 options: homeschool, virtual, face-to-face. You need to understand what they all mean, thus you want to read the fine print. Here's your homework. I'm an educator. Yes, you're going to get homework when you're talking to an educator. There's 6 things you need to do. You're probably like, oh my gosh, why is this guy giving us 6 things? These 6 things are going to help you make a good decision for your child. You need to find your child's school reopening plan for 2020-2021. It's possibly posted on the school website or the district website. Some plans are literally being made as I'm making this video, so you may have to be patient in a sense, but you need to make sure you find out, do we have a plan out there? Second, identify the decision deadline. Most of schools and districts are providing parents a 1-week turnaround. That's very quick to make a big decision that has bigger impacts, as I told you about the funding pieces. Thus, understand that deadline, because there will possibly be a default option, and the default option is typically not what you want it to be. Homework step 3, learn the options, focus on the definitions. As I told you all prior, don't look at just the big picture term. What does that mean? Homework step 4, discuss with 3 to 5 families, community members. We're in this together. Just because you understand it, make sure others understand it. Because again, it can be confusing. A lot of things are going to happen between now and back to school. Thus, I'm going to try to break it down to you all in bite-sized chunks. So as things come about, all right, we're at this stage. 5, make sure you submit your decision. Don't go and say, oh my gosh, I forgot. Make sure you submit that decision. And 6, join your school advisory council. When school starts in the fall, in whatever format, join the school advisory council. This allows you to be up to date with what is actually happening in regards to policy within the school. PTA is great. That's more activity based, but you want to understand what are some policies happening within the schools. My thoughts for teachers, it's going to be imperative that you create lessons that can be delivered in person, hybrid, or remote. This is just something to think about. I'm priming the pump for later. Parents, do not select to have your child retained. Based upon the spring, a lot of parents are saying, I'm going to just hold them back a year. Don't do that. Let them go to their appropriate grade starting in the fall. And for the educational community, understand we're in this together. We got to work together in these times and make sure we all understand what is going on. My recommendation, what I'm doing for my kids, I'm selecting the option 2 where they're going to be at home but receiving on-campus instruction. This allows my child to still remain in their home school. They can still receive whatever services and activities the school is providing. They can stay on pace. That way in January, if things resume, they can fully go back. I am personally not going to say fully homeschool them, because you have to make sure you have the resources for that and you can teach all the subjects and do different things. Also, the virtual option, I'm trying to make sure every teacher maintains their jobs. Thus, if everybody's pulling their kids and go fully virtual, one, we're going to lose face-to-face teachers. Also, if everyone goes virtual, understand a lot of the onus is going to be on you and as a parent to make sure your child understands the material. Listen clearly, Dr. Childs is not against virtual learning whatsoever. But as it relates to fall reopening, I want us to clearly understand what are the options. But I think it is best, again, for maintaining funding, which is going to have bigger impacts later, that if you don't want to see your child face-to-face, put them in the at-home version of face-to-face school so they still remain connected to school and funding, because there's some bigger things at play. This is the decision to open school is very political. There are a lot of things happening behind the scenes. I won't go into details, but we're going to have to get ahead of some of these things. But right now, what you're presented with, those are your four options. Traditional school, face-to-face, traditional school at home, a fully virtual, or your home school. Those are typically your four options. Look at the terminology. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, www.christopherchilds.com/contact. You have to put the numeral 1. I can help you as it relates to selecting the options. Later, we can get into the nuances of what does it look like, etc. But right now, we need to understand what are the options.